Hello folks, I'm Headley, another fat bearded man talking about records. And I promised in my last video where I was looking at UK folk rock that I would do US folk rock. I suppose that could include Canadian, but actually there aren't any, I don't think, in this list of 5 I'm going to show you. Now I have to say, I do have a problem with the term folk rock. Well, I suppose I have a problem with the term folk when connected with US music. I mean, obviously, we would say that Dylan is folk. That kind of goes without saying, until he then later became, folk rock or rock and roll. Rock and roll. Don't you sound old when you say rock and roll? Pathetic. Anyway, yeah, I like I said, I have issues with it because when you look at UK folk rock, it's clear what's going on there. You are picking tunes from the folk repertoire that have been around for 200, 300 years, and you're presenting them in a modern rock kind of format. The issue I have with US folk rock is it doesn't draw on any tradition of a folk music that existed. I mean, there is what I would call folk rock in America, because if you think about the music that was transplanted from the UK and Ireland to Appalachia, and that sort of folk there, that obviously when that was twinned with rock, it kind of becomes country rock, because that is what that folk rock is. Country rock. I mean, you could also talk about the blues, becoming blues rock. You could also talk about all kinds of other immigrant music and styles being twinned with it. But what is called folk rock, I don't really class it as folk. Acoustic music, Anyway, this is my problem with the word folk. I'm far too literal, and I need boundaries. I need boundaries. If you don't have boundaries, you're running loose, aren't you? I mean, if you don't have boundaries, the geese are getting out. They need to be in, and they need to know what folk music is. I'm starting to go off the rails. Anyway, so in this one, I have put together a group of 5 records, which me, would call folk rock. Other people have called them folk rock, may call them folk rock. You might call them folk rock. You might not think they're folk rock. Let me know. I'd really like to get some input from people on what you feel US folk rock is. Yeah, anyway, it's quite a nebulous term and can be, all kinds of things. Neil Young, he's Canadian. Simon & Garfunkel, as we said before, Bob Dylan. There's all kinds of stuff that gets lumped together, which is quite different in many ways. Anyway, this is going on already. This is 3.5 minutes in, and I haven't shown a record. So let's show a record. So the first one I'm going to show, and this is, I think, quite a diverse collection. Obviously, within the boundaries, we need boundaries of what I would think of as folk rock. So this is Repairs. This is already a household word from 1971. It was formed in the late 60s by, what are their names? Peter McCann and Jim Honeycutt. Yeah, they're on the back here as well. At Fairfield University in Connecticut. And they kind of spiraled from there, adding members. And obviously were influenced by the kind of 60s folk rock scene and what was going on. This is quite a diverse record. You can't say it follows any one style of kind of folk music or folk rock. It is on one, there's kind of quite folky. There's some that are quite poppy, almost twee in some ways. Some of them are kind of slightly psychedelic. So there's a bit of everything, which is probably the problem with this and their follow-up record. They are perhaps too diverse. They were doing a gig at West Point in New York, and Andrew Loog Oldham was in the audience, and he liked what he heard, and he brokered a deal with them with Rare Earth Records. Rare Earth, there you go. And they recorded this album. So he produced it as well. And like I said, it's a bit of a mixture of everything. It's all kinds of stuff going on. You've got a bit of Crosby, Stills and Nash in there. Simon and Garfunkel. There's certainly, I think, the second track. What's it called? Measures. Definitely sounds like a Simon and Garfunkel song. Like I said, you've got the pop folk rock in there as well. But I think the two interesting tracks are most interesting are by what's the guy's name? He is called Larry Treadwell, who's a member of the band, and he wrote two of them called Sleepwalking Child and Bummer World, and those have a more modern, I say modern, but contemporary feel, because a lot of the other stuff sounds almost like it could have been done in the late 60s, so it's looking backwards slightly, whereas I think those two tracks by Treadwell are looking forward. They're more introspective, they are more serious maybe. Yeah, so an interesting band. Like I said, their second album was also produced by Andrew Loog Oldham. I think there was a third live album that was only released in Germany. How these things happen, I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, have a listen to them. They're a nice mix of sort of male and female vocals. But I'll perhaps play you a track called Sleepwalking Child. That's Repairs.
A fast-talking card man was counting his fears, spending his soul on his lot. Naked burns of light are in my eyes, sleepwalking child of my dreams. My children are crawling away from your door. For Pandora's magic they scream.
Okay, Repairs with Already a Household Word. Yeah, so that was from 1971. Interesting stuff. Okay, next up we've got Lamb. Now I have shown this before. This is Cross Between by Lamb. And this was from 1971, another 71 album. Oh, I've got a bit of a reflection going on. Yeah, interesting album. It's basically these two guys, which is Barbara Moritz and Bob Swanson. I love that picture. It's very sort of in a log cabin. It's very sort of rural, and which isn't quite what this sounds like. Now I have shown this before, so forgive me if you've seen me show this, but I thought it would fit in here because it's an interesting record. This is their second of 3 albums. The first one is a little bit more experimental, a bit more part of the sort of, they were part of the San Francisco scene. In fact, I'm jumping ahead, but Jerry Garcia plays on about 3 of the tracks, although he isn't credited, but he does get a thank you on the back cover. It's a mixture, this, of folk, gospel. There's a bit of country in there. I mean, you've even got a bit of jaw harp in there. That makes it sound pretty damn rural. But then equally on the other side, there's an avant-garde classical kind of feel to it, which is a very odd kind of sounding record, a bit all over the place. But Barbara Moritz Barbara Moritz has an incredible voice. It's a kind of a sort of a, she seems to be able to do anything, from hushed vocals to sort of slightly more sort of what's the word? A brassy kind of bluesy voice. So she's very good. And obviously Bob Swanson is a bit of a songwriting genius, because they wrote all the record, all the songs on the record. There's lovely arrangements by a guy called Ed Bogus. Well, that sounds like a fake name, Ed Bogus. But yeah, so this is a kind of a, like I said, avant-garde folk rock with a kind of a, again, slightly baroque, slightly jazzy, slightly classical. But I'd still say it's folk rock. You know, there we go. See what you reckon. Lamb.
You know, that old friend and me, we were always together. The sky was always blue. That same feeling came when I saw you sitting there, looking at me that way. I just had to say, pardon me, sir. I seem to be floating away, away. I knew you'd understand, and when I touched your hand, I saw a light come shining through your eyes. We should get to know each other better than my friend and me before, and open all the little doors.
Okay, there we had Lamb. Okay, next up, this is perhaps a little bit more conventional, well, certainly more conventional. And this is an album from 1972 called, it's by a group called The Ship, but it's also an album called The Ship. As you can see at the bottom, a contemporary folk music journey, it calls itself. Now, this is a kind of a concept album. It started as a song cycle performance piece that lasted about an hour, written by Steve Melchenka and Steve Cowan. Have I got that right? Yes. Let's check on the back. Steve Melchenka and Steve Cowan, yes. So they wrote this piece, and it toured. It started in Illinois, what was it? The University of Illinois, at a coffee shop. Well, they had a venue at over the coffee shop, and it ran for about 5 shows. Then they had a holiday, a bit of a vacation break. Came back, did some more, and eventually so that was 71, and then 72 they recorded the album. Obviously. This was put together based on that original live show. It is quite Crosby, Stills and Nash, I would say. If you like that type of stuff, it's almost country rock if the country rock people weren't interested in cowboys and were more interested in sailors. That sounded dodgy. I don't know why. But yeah, so it's a song cycle where the songs, it's about a journey, about a voyage, which is a metaphor for the journey in life. There you go. Yeah, it's lovely in places. It's some of it almost has a little bit of a kind of a hornpipey kind of thing, without getting too sort of folky at all. But there's a definite feel of that. And yeah, you do feel like you've been on a journey there. It was produced by Gary Usher, who obviously worked with the Byrds and the Beach Boys. But apparently, he just got sent the sort of the material. They recorded it with him. He produced it. They didn't really like what he did with it, so they literally kind of took it apart. So in many ways, actually, although it says it's produced by Gary Usher, it doesn't have much production by Gary Usher going on at all. They did do a second album in 1976, but there's lyrics inside and a ship. Yeah, so if you want sort of watery country rock, but definitely folk rock, yeah. So it's a nice sounding album. very sort of mellow, yeah, think of Crosby, Stills and Nash at sea. There you go.
The clouds are shifting gently and the stars are in the sky. Slowly I'm awakened by a sound. Finally I remember what it was that brought me here. But now the sea is silent, safe and calm. Now I must determine where the storm has taken me, for timelessness has left the ship unmanned. Water all around me for as far as I can see. What direction do I take to find the land?
Okay, next up we've got Taos. Taos? Named after the New Mexico commune where the group lived. They're a bunch of hippies were living on this this commune, and you'd have thought that music produced by a bunch of hippies on a commune would be kind of a ramshackle affair, but it isn't. This is very well put together. It's a nice mix of upbeat folk and bit of country. In fact, I nearly saved this for a video I think I'm going to do on records that are not quite country but not quite folk. They're kind of frontry. Should we call it frontry? Folk country, frontry. Yeah, anyway, never mind. That's a horse of a different name. But yeah, so it's great. It's got a bit of Birdsian swagger to it. Do they swagger to the Birds swagger? In my mind, maybe they do. But yeah, it's upbeat, poppy, good fun. There are a couple of things that annoy me about it. There's a kind of a repeated motif, a tune which is called "The Day Begins," which they intersperse it in across the album, where it'll play for about 10 seconds and then they'll go on to the next track. And it's kind of like, well, it's pleasant enough, but why don't you extend it into a proper song and stop putting it in these bits like that? Anyway, and then there's some interview bits with some I don't know, sort of hippie ladies who sound a bit creepy, and I don't like those bits. But they kind of, I think they're only on the first side, and then they kind of forget about them and don't put them on the second. But yeah, now the interesting thing about the album cover is these pictures. Now in having to do a little bit of research for this, obviously, clearly not much, because I'm not telling you much about it. But like, for example, the members of the band. But I don't know. I think I'm missing the, as you can see, lovely seam splits. Don't you love American records? Actually, I think it's Canadian. No, I know it's a white label promo, and it's got somebody's name on it. I'm starting to go off the rails. Keep it together, Headley. Keep it together. What was I saying? So yeah, so the pictures are great, give an idea about the commune, and I did a bit of research and discovered that I think this is a place which was a village, a pueblo village, which of course pueblo means people, is a people, and it also means village people, the village people, or pueblo. the New Mexican village people. Yeah, anyway, sorry, I don't know. And the town that you see pictured here is a place that I understand has been inhabited for over 1,000 years. It's now a World Heritage Site, but in the 70s they needed a bit of money, and they were quite happy to get paid by all these artists and musicians to come and live there on a commune. So yeah, you can visit this place, this pueblo at Taos. Yeah, it sounds an absolutely fascinating place. And it's a fascinating album. Really good stuff, upbeat, brilliant. Taos. that was Taos. After my rambling description of that, let's quickly move on to the last record. And this is Apalooza. Now, this is a band from Boston. That's a terrible cover, isn't it? Ringware, paint on it. And there's an Apalooza horse on the back. There you go. So, yeah. So, this is a kind of a folk baroque rock album from 1969. It's the only album that the band recorded, unfortunately, because I think it's an absolute cracker. It is a kind of a mostly mellow, I would say almost an autumnal record. I mean, it's got the cello in it. So anything with a lot of cello, I think, instantly becomes a sort of an autumnal sound and a mellow kind of thing. But if you've watched the video I did about folk rock duos, you might remember Compton and Batto. And that's John Parker Compton and Robin Batto, and they started in this band. So they were here, and then they weren't. They were as a duo after the failure of this record, which is surprising. It's on Columbia. You'd have thought it had a lot of support. I suppose there'd been a lot of baroque kind of folk rock kind of stuff going around, so it was only one of many. It was produced by Al Cooper. And so, you know, so it obviously had some kind of pedigree behind it. But yeah, like I said, it's a lovely record. You've got the twin cello and violin throughout. There's a lot of orchestration, orchestral music, instruments in there. I think, what do we get? Harps and things like that. I think it tells you things like that. String arrangements, obviously. You get saxophones, all kind of stuff. Yeah, so if you like Belle and Sebastian, you might like some of this. I think there's definite matches to the type of arrangements and the music. I'd be very surprised if Belle and Sebastian hadn't heard this. Anyway, I'm going to leave you that. I will be back, probably with something. I might go on to some solo artists who bridge that folk and country. They're not folk and they're not country, but they're in the middle, as we're calling it, frontry. Yeah, that's not going to catch on, is it? Anyway, sorry, I'm being silly. I apologise. So Apalooza, it's a lovely record. Go out and listen to it, and I will be back with another video at some point. So until then, bye bye for now.
I told you when your room was pink, honey sweet, and your windows won't help you think. Didn't want you to leave, just wanted you to stay. Oh yeah, yeah. And honey, by the way, would you pay me oodles more, honey, if I cried overtime at your door? Didn't want you to leave, just wanted you to stay. Oh yeah, yeah. And honey, by the way, living's not easy now that you're gone.